What a fascinating presentation, and thank you very much. I do want to ask you, in your travels or working as an Anam Aira, you have interactions with the souls on the other side. Do they say anything to you? Do they thank you? Do they advise you? Anything like that? Or is it just you working with the person that's passing?
Well, when I'm on the other side, I have connection with other people, but usually that connection is intentional, meaning that before I get into my meditative state, I say who I want to connect in with. So it's an intentional connection. Um, Although I've gone over and just sort of had kind of an open, okay, I just want to go over here and have this kind of experience or that kind of experience, and then any number of things can happen. But I don't usually meet individual souls unless I intend to meet them. That makes sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
I was just going to say what a beautiful soul she is. And the meditation that she mentioned, I didn't quite catch the name of it. To actually put you in and out of body to get you to going into the outer body experience. Because I've actually been trying to do this without any success for a while.
It's not necessarily a specific meditation. It's the type of CD that Bob Monroe had created called hemisynchronization. And you can go on the Monroe website to their bookstore, and they have, I don't know, hundreds of CDs that you can get. And actually, in the last few years, they've created an app that you can either get free have short experiences using that same hemisync sound. And those short experiences are usually 10, 15-minute experiences. But the name of the app is Expand, EXPAND. But if you want to have kind of the full access to it, it costs somewhere around $90 a year, something like that. And there's hundreds of CDs on there or MP3s that will allow you to get into these deep meditative states. And some of them, well, all of them are partially narrated, and some are, narrated at the beginning, at the end, and then allow time in between to have your own experience.
That's lovely. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
Judy, what an absolute amazing story. What an adventure you've been on. I could ask you questions till the cows come home, but I was intrigued by the term Focus 27. It seems so precise, and it seems like an Earth term. Where does that originate from, and can you help me with the meaning of that?
I don't exactly know. I mean, I think Bob Monroe he was trying to create, so he taught other people to go to the other side at the Monroe Institute. And he wanted to have a language so that people going to the same place could identify where they were to each other. So the things that go on in Focus 27, he labeled it Focus 27, Focus 12, Focus 15, Focus 23, Focus 24. So it's just a label for different levels of awareness on the other side where you can have different kinds of experiences. And then each person who's having those kinds of experiences, they can use the same language.
Okay.
In Focus 27, this is what happens, and this is where I was, and so forth.
That helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
Judy, great presentation. Thank you so much. The work you're doing was something I had not heard of before on this level. And just as a point of curiosity, when you communicate with them, like you were communicating with the woman who was dying, is that telepathic? Did
Yeah.
you feel
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So that was my question. And thank you again.
You know, I've worked with several people from other countries. Like when I first started doing this, one of my friends here was from Switzerland and wanted me to work with her mother, who spoke only the language in Switzerland, which I don't know, Swedish. I don't know what the language is in Switzerland. But I was able to communicate very well with her because, you know, on the other side, time and space and language doesn't matter.
Thank you. Judy, thank you so much. What a lovely presentation, and I so admire your work. I sort of a twofold question. One is when you're assisting another soul who's not yet crossed and you're bringing them to meet folks and they get comfortable and then you assist their soul back, are they consciously aware that you're doing that, or have you connected just with their soul self and they come back and even though they feel more comfortable, they're not in their conscious human awareness? They don't, I'm guessing that they don't know what's actually happened. So I'd love you to speak to that. And the other question I have is about if you've worked with folks that aren't aware that they've crossed, that they have crossed, they're not aware of it and they need help to get to where they need to be.
So the first question, they're not necessarily consciously aware of what I've done. So what I do is I get into a meditative state and I connect in with their soul and I ask them if they want to go across. So, and if they say yes, then we go across together and have whatever experience we're going to have. And then I bring them back. One of the first times that I did that was with a fellow who was like 35 years old, and he was dying of cancer, and he was very restless and very agitated. His family was with him. Many of his family members were with him, and he was up and down in bed and all over the place. He couldn't settle down, couldn't have a normal conversation with them because he just was anxious. And one of his cousins had asked me to connect in with him. So I did that, and I took him over for a visit. His mother had died some years before that, and he had been very close to his mother. And after she died, his life had sort of fallen apart. And at this point, he had kind of gotten some things together. He had gone back to school, finished his education, gotten a good job, met a woman, fell in love, got married. So when I took him over to the other side to visit, his mother was there. And his mother, told him what was happening and told him what the process was. And even one of the things that you can do on the other side is you can create your own special place there so that you can go visit it before you die. And I've created my own special place there, which is wonderful. So he created his own special place there where he could go back over and visit his mother and loved ones that had already. So when I brought him back to his body, consciously, he didn't know I did that. However, his behavior changed 180 degrees. He had been in a nap sleep situation, and he woke up and he was calm, he was relaxed, he was happy, he was joyful, and he died, I don't know, a couple of weeks later, I think. But after that experience, even though he was not consciously aware that we had done that, it changed his whole demeanor in his life. And the last weeks of his life was quality time with the loved ones that he had here.
My question is around the Focus 27 area, Judy. What does it look like? Can you describe it, or does it depend on what the soul kind of want to create, as in the soul of the person that you're bringing across?
Well, there's all kinds of areas within Focus 27. One of the areas within Focus 27 is a park. And that's when people die, that's where they initially go. It's this beautiful, incredible park. And different people will describe it differently, somewhat, I think, depending on each person's own culture. But however anybody describes it, it is beyond any description of anybody here on Earth. So whether you live in Canada or United States or China or wherever, your experience of what a beautiful park looks like pales compared to what the experience on the other side is like when they're over there. So there are different, as I said, there are different levels of different areas within Focus 27 that present differently. But one of those places that everybody has a similar experience, although they would describe it somewhat differently. Somebody from China would describe a beautiful park differently than somebody in the Pacific Northwest would describe a beautiful park. And that doesn't matter, but whatever, it's a beautiful park beyond description.
Thank you, Judy, for a very illuminating talk. Some of your training and experience is similar to mine, but you do quite a number of things in your practice that I was unfamiliar with, but I'm certainly going to learn from them. One thing I'd like to add, when people asked about Focus 27, my recollection from, I did read all the Monroe books and then also the Bruce Moen books. Somebody in there described Focus 27 as being created by people from the Monroe Institute as a place that would be suitable for people that did not have an overriding belief system, a religion or a political philosophy or whatever, and sort of free spirits. And they specifically created Focus 27 for that, including the park. And also, I recall several retrieval attempts. Again, I can't remember. I'm sorry. Was it Bob Monroe in one of his books? Or it certainly was Bruce Moen. They talk about taking groups of people and then feeling like from a disaster or whatever, feeling people drop off as they went vibrationally through like Focus 24 or 25 or 26, because they instinctively knew that's where they belong. So not everyone would get to Focus 27. If you retrieved a bunch of people and they had one or two had an overriding belief system in some religion, they would drop off at the area that they were most comfortable to.
Right.
And that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Yeah. The only thing I would say about that is Focus 27 wasn't created at the Monroe Institute. Focus 27 was created by humanity over eons of time.
Well.
But it wasn't, I mean, Bob Monroe discovered it and found it, but he didn't create it. It was already there, and it existed and continues to exist.
Well, perhaps my memory is faulty. It's years since I read the Bob Monroe stuff, and even just as long since I read the Bruce Moen stuff, and that's how I recalled it. But perhaps your memory is more accurate than mine.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Judy, and everybody else for being here that we could do this. And I'm wondering if you work with people that are still living as they are, still having things to do here, but they also are preparing to, they're closer to crossing than they are to keeping on going, and the physical presence part of the work that you might do. I'm curious about that part of is that part of the training you've had and part of your experience?
Well, yes, I do work with people to help them get ready for dying. And one of the processes that I learned about, they used to have, in the United States, they used to have afterlife conferences every year for several years. I think it went on for 10 plus years. And I went to several of them and met some of my people that I've admired forever, like Raymond Moody, and he gave me a kiss on my cheek. uh, and one of the people that I met at one of those afterlife conferences is a guy by the name of William Peters.
Yes.
He lives in Santa Barbara, California. And he's been studying shared death experiences. That he had his own shared death experiences. He had some near death experiences, and he had some shared death experiences. And then he's a psychologist, and he's been doing research on shared death experiences. And I met him at one of these conferences, and at that point he was putting together a program to teach other people how to help others have a shared death experience. So that's one of the things that I've done in working with others who are getting ready to die, if they're interested in that kind of thing, is to help them get ready for the potential of a shared death experience. And the two people that I've worked most closely with two people that I've worked closely with to do that, they both had amazing shared death experiences at the end of life.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Judy.
Hi.
I almost went to the Monroe Institute a couple years ago, and then the COVID hit, and everything was online. So I didn't sign up, but I was really thinking of doing it. And I remember looking at the itinerary, and it was 5 days, I believe, and it was meditating in the morning and in the afternoon, with the hemisync and everything in these pods. And for me, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go or not, because the longest I've ever meditated is 2 hours, and that was a big effort. And so I would think for me it would be very fatiguing. I'm wondering, you went 4 times. What do you think? How was it for you? Thank you.
It was amazing. It's amazing. You're energized. You're excited. I want more. We would start like at 8 o'clock in the morning. We stayed there, and we lived there. We ate there. We slept there, and we had all our experiences there. And we were 24 hours a day at the Monroe Institute. And our day would start like at 8 o'clock in the morning. We would have breakfast, and then we would meet, have several experiences, and then we'd have lunch, and then we usually had a couple of hours break in the afternoon, and then get back at it, and then we would have lunch, have dinner, and then there was usually either a speaker or some other experiences in the evening. So it would go from like 8 o'clock in the morning till 9 or 10 at night. But it was like six and a half days or something like that. And I was just, everybody that was there with me, all the times that I've ever been there, it's just energizing. It's just exciting and energizing. And, you can't wait for the next experience to happen. So.
Okay.
You were seeing results, it seems. So you weren't fatigued by the amount of meditation that you had to do, the length of time in that?
No. As a matter of fact, the first time I went, the roommate that I had was a wonderful woman, and we became really close really fast. So after everything had happened at the by 10 o'clock at night, then we would stay up till 12 or 2 o'clock in the morning talking. And then, get up and be ready at 8 o'clock the next morning again. And, we were both just energized to the max.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you so much, Judy. It was great. I'm a big fan of Monroe, but because I'm in Australia, when I go, I have to always do 2 weeks. Otherwise, the flight and everything is too much. But I wanted to ask you, I had an experience that I find exactly the same. It is so exciting when you're there, and the people are exciting, and the trainers are great. So I had an experience with 27 where I went there in a train because I'm lazy. So I met a man on the train, on the side of the train when the train stopped, and I picked him up in 23. Nobody there, nobody on the train, nobody on the platform, nothing, him. And so I had said, hey, I'm on the wrong station. I need to go to 27. Come with me. And he was looking for his wife. And when I got to the park, I placed them, there were, benches for me. And I placed him on a bench and I go, look, let me find out where your wife could be. And as I was walking, this lady ran past me and, was hugging him, and it was so beautiful. Would that have been in a way that was my experience to help that gentleman at that time?
Yeah,
because it was so real, so real.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely, yeah.
Yes, so because I have been thinking about, we'll go back to Monroe and Hemisync, and then I go, now I hear you speaking, I go, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that you need to be with the person that you're helping, that it's not something that you can do long distance, or you can?
No, I do it long distance. I mean,
okay.
Back in the end of September of last year, I was interviewed by this guy for this podcast called Next Level Soul. It was published the first part of November. And I've been getting requests from all over the world since then. I've had over 500 requests from, all over the United States, all over Canada, Europe, all over Europe, Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan, all over. And, all I need to do is in order to connect in with somebody, I just ask for their full legal name, and I get into a meditative state and say their legal name, and I'm with them wherever they are.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it seemed to have expanded from when I had my first question, which was that you needed to be a nurse and know, the process of the dying, where they were at. But as your presentation went on, it expanded from my original question. So thank you for that.
Would you like to hear about my dog, Sophie?
Yeah.
So some years ago, I adopted this dog. She'd been owned by a friend of mine who was working at the Ashland Hospital when I was working there. And we had a staff meeting one time, and my friend had brought Sophie to the staff meeting, and I just fell in love with her. And then about a year later, she asked me whether I would be interested in having her, adopting her, because Glenda had a teenage daughter who, for some reason, didn't like Sophie and was always yelling at her, and she felt like Sophie should be someplace where she was getting loved and not yelled at. So I adopted Sophie, and I had her for several years. And she was this just ball of love. And then one day she got sick. She was very I can't think of the word I want, but very down in the mouth, I would say. So I took her to the vet, and they did lab work on her, and they didn't exactly know what was going on with her. And at the place that I was going didn't have anybody that stayed there overnight, so I couldn't leave her there. I had to bring her back home. So I brought her home, and she was very, very lethargic. And she had a chair, and I had a chair, so I moved her chair next to my chair. So she was curled up in the chair, and I was crying. I was sad, but I kept talking to her, and I was petting her and just loving on her. And then at one point, it seemed to me like she was asking me to pick her up. So I picked her up in my lap, and I was just holding her. And for about an hour, she just gazed into my eyes with this most loving look. And I was just sobbing. But I had her in my lap, and I didn't have any Kleenex in my pocket, and I was tilt my head back so I could, kind of sniff back the stuff that was coming out of my nose so it would drop on her. But she just held that gaze for an hour. And then I had the sense that she wanted to get back in the chair. So I put her back in the chair, got her all settled. And about 2 minutes later, she died. She stopped breathing. And, I had been doing this work for some period of time, and I was used to going over to the other side with people, and I wanted to go with her. I wanted to escort her across and see where she went, but I couldn't. I was just sobbing and just sad. I couldn't do it. So I sat there and cried for a while, and then eventually kind of fell asleep. And a few hours later, I woke up, and she was still in the chair. She had died. So I decided to see at that point whether I could connect in with her. So I put on, my HemiSync CD, and I went into meditative state, and I called her name. And this is what I experienced. I see Sophie in my place in Focus 27. Now, one of the things I had learned to do is create my own special place over there. And what I created was a beautiful log home that overlooks the ocean. The front yard slopes down to a bay where there's whales and critters that come up, and I can go talk to them. One of my guides sometimes shows up as a whale, whose name is Adventure. So I can go down and hang out with Adventure, down in the bay. So I go over, I call Sophie's name, and I'm with her, and where she is in my place. She's in the front yard of the place that I had created. And she's playing with someone, and she and I used to play, and how dogs do when they kind of get down on their front paws, and they kind of do this and jump back and forth. Well, that's what she was doing, and there was somebody there, there was a person there that she was playing with. So let me read from the book. This is fairly short here. I see Sophie in my place in Focus 27. She's in the front yard, running around, getting down on her front paws with her back end up, the way she used to play, moving back and forth sideways, like playing Catch Me If You Can. The yard is spacious, sloping down from the house. She is playing on the beautiful green grass. She has her cute little body and adorable hair, but is also less physical. Brilliant light shines through her, lightness and joy, fun. So much fun and joy is coming from her. She is playing with a person. The person is darting back and forth as Sophie is darting back and forth. They are both having such fun, playing, so happy, joyful. Light is coming from that person, bright light. Both have this bright brilliant light coming from their core. As I look closer at the person, I see that it is me. It is me that she's playing with, and I am this shining, joyful, laughing being playing with my Sophie, and we're both like we've done so many times before. It is amazing to see myself. I had never seen myself on the other side before, but now I am the observer and the observer, the observed and the observer of myself. So I see us playing for a while, just having this a ball, and then the experience fades, and I'm back here. And for me, that experience took away the profound sadness I was feeling. I still felt sad, but I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't sobbing anymore, because I knew where she was, and I knew that I was there too. You know, as souls, we're multidimensional beings. We're everywhere all the time, everywhere. So I'm over there with her, and she's here with me. I just am not aware of it most of the time. But that was my initial experience with Sophie after she died.
Yes, Judy, and hi, it's good to see you again. We met at my presentation in Ashland.
Yes, yes.
Okay, hi. What a brief question. My late partner, Jane, who passed in 2007, left her body about, maybe 7-8 hours before the body expired. Have you been in those kinds of situations, and what has that, if so, what has that experience looked like to you?
Well, when someone dies, it's not necessarily a discrete happening. People can be in and out of their body for periods of time. You know, I'm a volunteer at we have a local hospice house here in the area that I helped create. I was on the board when we created it, and I now go there as a volunteer, a spiritual volunteer, and I've been at the bedside with people who are in the dying process, and this is an example of that, where I was with this elderly guy, and I had seen him several times over previous weeks, and he was a grumpy old guy. Hadn't really had much fun interaction with him. You know, I just kind of let him be grumpy. But at this point, this time that I was sitting with him, he was in a coma, and he was in the dying process. Anyway, so as I was sitting there, I saw him, all of a sudden, he opened his eyes, and he had this expression on his face like a beautiful little boy. He had the beautiful, biggest smile on his face, and I had only seen him in his grumpy entirement, that he was like, it's like a little, 3-year-old, a 4-year-old boy just seeing something joyful, and he was looking up, kind of up at the ceiling with this amazing, his eyes were open, they were shining, they were, and as I said, his expression was like a beautiful, precious little boy. And he just stared, and I was hoping that I could kind of focus and see what he was seeing, but I couldn't. However, so I just sat there and was kind of witness of that. And a few minutes later, he closed his eyes and kind of went back into a coma. And he died, a couple of days later. but whatever he was seeing was something from the other side that was making him very happy. He was, I would say, he was already on the other side to some degree, kind of float back and forth. It's not like you're here and then you're there. It's like, for me, I'm here and I'm there at the same time. So that makes sense.
Thank you, Judy.
I just wanted to comment. I heard several people asking, well, what's it like on the other side, or what's it like in Focus 27? And from my current level of understanding, which is always subject to growth and change, it's what are you like? Because what you're like is going to be your outer experience, I think. So there isn't a set pattern, I don't think. And would you agree with that, Judy?
Yeah, I do. I think our experience and our culture kind of colors our experience to some degree. Like if it's somebody from China or Japan, they're going to have a somewhat different experience of what Focus 27 is than what I experienced.
Sure. Yeah. So it pays to take care of what you're like inside, because that's going to be reflected back to you in the afterlife.
Yes, Judy, you were talking about the life review, and it raises a question for me. I'm thinking that in my current mindset, with things I've gone through in my life, that I could see some rather cringe-worthy moments. And so there's some trepidation about a life review. However, you mentioned that, when this soul goes to the other side, they're in a hospital-like setting. And it seems that there's some sort of dissipation of the issues of life. And then they go on to their life review. Now, to me, that would connote that they are now in a different type of mindset than, the mindset that we, have in this life. So I'm wondering if you can comment on that, how, the mindset of the person, once they've gone through this treatment, as it were, on the other side, do you have any sense of what they are like, what they're thinking, what their feelings are when approaching the life review?
Well, I would say that it's not viewed as a scary thing. It's not viewed judgmentally. It's viewed as, I went to this school and I learned some things, and I didn't get some lessons. So here are some lessons that maybe I didn't get, and maybe I need to learn a little bit more. That might be something that you would then go to the Akashic record area later to learn more about how you could do that differently in the next lifetime. But it's a very supportive and loving experience for the person going through it, and it's only there for their own edification and growth, so that they can look at what they did or what they didn't do and how they could have done it differently in another lifetime or in a different situation. It's very gentle and very loving.
Thank you very much.
One of the things that seems fairly obvious to me is that lucid dreaming can be thought of as a sort of, excuse me, a kindergarten of the afterlife. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It teaches us a bit how to connect and reconnect and stay connected. It's a way to help us learn how to do that in real life here.
It also seems to me that just ordinary every day or every night dreaming itself teaches us that our perception of reality is relative. I mean, when we're in the dream, that's total reality to us.
Right, exactly.
And that's a very important lesson that's accessible to all of us.
Right, yeah.
Well, that's it. Thank you.
What can people do in order to ensure that they can make an easy transition?
Well, what comes to mind is forgiveness of self, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of all the things that we thought wrongly, of all the judgments that we've made, forgiveness. And I've spent a good several years focusing on forgiveness, and it helps. And I think that the more work you can do in that, you're on good steads, ready to go forward.
Just thank you, Judy. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Was that thank you, Daniel?
Somebody else?
Well, thank you very much, Judy. You know, one of the things that we're here to experience is the expansion of ourselves. And what you have presented today in terms of being able to work as an Anam Aira and your experiences with people of passing certainly adds to that sense of expansion, that we are far more than who we think we are. And thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.